Hi guys, how are you? So we're just going to show how to do this lovely little rainbow bead bracelet. This is a thinner one I made before, but for tutorial purposes we're going to do it twice as thick so it's easier to see. But it's got a nice little end clasp, so there's nice. So if you want your jewelry pliers just to help maneuver these pieces on at the end, it's much easier than trying to do it with your hands. Nice little bit of chain, so chain length is yours, but you don't need it too long. 2 little jump rings or split rings, I never know the difference between them. 2 little end caps for your beads, these just slide over one row of your beads so it's nice and neat. And then your lobster claw clasp for attaching your chain to when you do it up. Okay, you'll need your beading needle obviously, because otherwise you're not going to be able to bead anything. The thread zapper is purely for cutting the thread. You can use the scissors I have here as well. I swap and change depending on my mood. And then obviously your thread for beading and creating the bracelet, which mine's just a nice little white nylon thread. I have a black background on this, a piece of black card, just so you can see the thread easier against my background. Line up your beads in the order that you want to use them. That's usually easier and more efficient. And then you want some glue. This is E6000 plus, but anything that's good for jewelry will work. And then, as usual, a cocktail stick or a long pointy quill tool to apply your glue. Okay, so we're just going to use a slip knot to attach this to one of the little metal screws at the side of the loom here. And then we're just going to work backwards and forwards, putting a strand of this thread in each little coil and then wrapping around the middle screw. It's at the top of that loom as well. You might, if you've got a narrower loom, then you might only have the one screw. As you can probably see on mine, I have 3 because I can make wider projects on this one. So you're just going to line them up so it's nice and neat, working backwards and forwards. You can see sometimes you have to maneuver it into position because it likes to go elsewhere. But we're doing 6 colours, but because I'm doing double the size so you can see, it's actually going to be 2 beads of each colour. So for this we're going to want 13 strands, which will give us 12 spaces, because the beads fit in between the strands in those little spaces. So you just have to match the thickness of your band to how many beads you're using plus 1, and that gives you your strand. So if we were doing the smaller one, 6 colour beads, with 6 with 1 for the extra strand is 7. So it just matches that. So make sure you count them all, because there's nothing worse than getting part way through and then realising you don't have enough strands or you had too many, which I've learnt the hard way. So just keep working back and forward until you've got enough strands for this, which, as I said, for me is 13, which gives me 12 spaces. So 2 each for the beads. So when you've got the amount you need, you just sort of snip off your thread, and then you're just going to do a little knot on the end to secure it. I often use a slip knot, makes it easy to get on and off, but it's not necessary. It's however you find to secure it in place. So you can just make a normal knot if that's easier for you. But you just want to make sure that all of the strands stay reasonably taut. You can turn your little ends to make it tighter, but you want to make sure they're all even, so they all have the same amount of tension across them, and make sure any that need realigning are realigned, like I do there. So it should have a little bounce in it, but it should be reasonably taut. Keen eyes of you noticed that when I did that, I somehow bent my needle, which I don't know how I did, but so I had to grab a new needle, which was clever of me, but oh well, never mind. Okay, so now you just want to grab your length of thread. I can work with quite a long thread, so I do usually 3 or 4 pulls almost wingspan, not total straight arms. But if you are not used to untangling fine threads, then it might be an idea to work with a smaller piece and then just add an extra piece in each time you run to the end, which is really simple to do, so don't worry about forcing yourself to work with longer pieces if you can't work with a long strand. So the first thing we're going to want to do is weave in the strands just to give a little solid edge for the beads to sit against. So we're just going up and under, so over and under each strand through, just, you know, normal basic weaving. In my case, just pull, pull, pull until you get to the end of the thread, because there's a lot there. It gets quicker near the end when there's not so much of that thread, but you're just going to do this 3 or 4 times is enough. I think maybe sometimes I do up to 5, it just depends on my mood and how tight I've got the weave at the time, so just do whatever you feel comfortable. I don't think anything less than 3, because you want to make sure that it's got something solid, and I think 3 strands, 3 repeats back and forwards is probably the most, the minimum amount you'd want to do. So try to make sure you've got a good base so that the beads can sit again. It just stops it going over the coils, because if otherwise it starts moving up over the coils and things can become a little uneven, which you don't want to do. Once you think you've got enough done, or you're getting close to it, don't forget to check your sizing against your clasp so you know that you're getting the correct width for your clasp, which you saw I just did then. It's only has to be a rough eye, but obviously when you attach your clasp, you want everything to fit inside that clasp area. I'm really sorry if you keep hearing the beep of my watch. I get no messages all day. I start doing this and I get messages. How's that for typical? Okay, so get all your beads ready. I take all the lids off at this point so that they're all ready instead of doing one by one. Doesn't necessarily work out well. I have a habit of spilling them, but it doesn't matter. It's your own choice. If you prefer to do one at a time, you can. So you want to get 2 beads. So 2 red, 2 orange, 2 yellow, 2 green, 2 blue and 2 purple onto your needle. Sometimes this is really quickly, and other times this takes me a while. Depends on how my beads are behaving. The yellow ones are misbehaving a lot today because they go ping in a minute. There we go. But yeah, we're just going to get 2 each on. It's, you need to have the full amount for the width all in one go, because of the way this works. You have to line them up first before we attach, so you can't do one at a time. So as you see, they're all nice and neatly lined up. So you're going to pull this all the way down to the end of your very long thread, so just keep on pulling until you get down to where you've woven in that bit. As you see there, just tuck the woven bit back down again, and then you're going to line this up on the underside, and you're going to pop the beads in between each strand, and you should feel and even sometimes hear a little pop as the bead pops into place. The first end bead, so the first red one, this can be a little jumpy when you're doing your first one, but that soon settles down after the remaining rows. But you just want to make sure they're all sat neatly in between each one. And then you can take your needle and you're going to go into the beads, but making sure you stay above those threads. So you're sandwiching the beads in between the threads while wrapping the cord around from the bottom up to the top and back to the other side, so it locks them all nice and neatly in place. So make sure your needle is staying on the top of your beads and on the top of those wires. If you don't, then the beads can drop down if you've gone underneath. As you see, the red was being a little tricky there, but it soon gets in. And you're just going to repeat this over again. So you're just going to pull the thread all the way through. Again, lots of it to pull through for this. But pull it through, and you want to pull it so it's firm but not too tight. You're not looking to make the beads squish. You've already set your size with the weaving, so you just want to keep it straight as you can at this point. Not all beads are made even, so sometimes you might get a little wave if one bead was thicker than the other. But in general, it should stay mostly straight. So you're going to get all your beads onto your needle again, which is what I'm just doing. You see they're all lined up. We're going to go underneath again, and we're just going to pop them all into place. It says you should feel a little pop as they line up into place. It can be a little fiddly sometimes, especially if your threads like to twist on you. If you get stuck, secure a couple along and then work along popping one in at a time. But always make sure that you're going over the top of that thread, not underneath that thread, and that will keep them secure. And you're just going to repeat this process for the entire length of your bracelet. So it's pretty simple. It's just select your beads in order, line it underneath, pop them up in line in between each of the threads, and then go through making sure that the needle stays above the threads, so at the top of the beads, locking it in place. So guys, once you're getting to near the end of your thread, you're going to need to measure where you are, see if you've got enough, and if you haven't, then advance the thing forward so you've got room to do more beading, and then weave in backwards and forwards the end of your current thread so that it's in there nice and secure, and then you can just snip that off or burn it off, and then attach a new piece of thread, which again is just weaving backwards and forwards. Make sure that you weave in the correct position, that your thread will end up on the correct side, which for me is always ending up on the left hand side to go under and weave, but there could be a personal preference. And then that's how you join in a new piece of thread, and then you carry on going like you were. Really nice and simple, and you'll just keep working until you've got to the size length that you want. When you've got to the size you want, you're just going to do a little more weaving with just the thread at the other end, just to match it to the side that you got. Just again to give some stability to those beads and hold them nice and straight for you. Pack your beads away so you don't spill any more, because as you see I like to spill them, and it's always best to pack them away as fast as possible. Snip off your end thread, leaving a little bit on the end obviously so that it doesn't unravel, and now we're going to glue the pieces in place. We're just going to glue along the woven thread edge, and then a tiny bit onto the beads just to secure it in place. We will add more glue later, but for now this is just to make sure that this all stays nice and neatly in place. So use your cocktail stick or your little stick, whatever you've got, and you're just going to dab some of that glue nicely along where you've woven it. Really work it in so that it gets through to both sides, because you want a good strong hold. Push up that weave so it's nice and tight against it. You want to make sure that when you attach your clasp that it's not going to pull the beads along your thread, so you want to really make sure it's secured in place. You can see I also put a little bit of glue in between the first two beads because I'm going to put that clasp over that first row of beads. so you want to make sure that that's joined nicely. And you're going to repeat the process on the other side, so just add that glue on both sides, and then you're going to need to wait for that to dry. Once it's all dried, make sure it is thoroughly dry. I left it overnight to guarantee it was dry. You're going to want to snip it off, but if you do it slowly, you can tie your ends. I always put a little knot at the end of each one as well, just for extra security. Might be overkill, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So I just snip the first 2 threads and then put a knot on those 2, and then I'll snip the next 2 threads and put a knot there. It gets a little fiddly the more you move along and the looser it gets. You can try to keep the threads down using the springs to hold it. Sometimes it works, sometimes they're just going to ping up and there's nothing you can do to stop it from pinging up. So you just have to pray to the spring beading gods. But yeah, just tie along nicely all the way along so that it's nice and neat and nice and secure. So you've got a really good strong base to attach your clasp to. And we're going to do this on both sides. Okay guys, so once you've got all of your threads done, it will ping off, so be careful. Just grab it all, pull it straight and just trim your threads. We'll trim them more later, but this is just an initial trim to get most of the bulk out of the way. So as I said earlier, you're going to just turn over and do the exact same thing on the other side, making sure they're all nice and neat and tidy and tied securely. Okay guys, it's finally time to add your end bead clasps. So you're going to need some glue put out for this so that you can glue it into place. Again, as I said, I like to overkill, so I use a lot of glue and a lot of knots, but it holds it in securely, you know it's not going to fall apart. So just get your little glob of glue as usual and your little pointy stick, grab your end cap, and you're going to use your little stick to poke the glue right the way down in the inside and layer it all the way around the piece. Be careful not to come out with a little hole at the bottom there, but just keep piling the glue in so it's going to be really nice and secure and snug. You are really good bond in there, so make sure you've got every last bit of the clasp, and then you're going to take your bracelet and you're going to slide it on. Now this can be a little fiddly, especially if you've still got too long strands, so do trim them down again, which you'll find I do in a second, because it is a little fiddly. You don't want to cut too close to the knot, but you want to make sure that there's not too much sticking in the way when you're trying to put this on. Often you'll find it will slide in easily and no problems, and other days it can just be really annoying and really fiddly and you're just going to have to do a bit more manoeuvring. So sometimes it helps to open up the clasp a little bit more, the little round disc that you're going to close at the end. Grab your little pliers and just give them a little pull to open it up a little, and that allows it to push and slide on a little easier, and you can really get it pushed right down neatly inside. So again, you're going to need to finalize any strands, cut them off out of the way or burn them off with the zapper, whichever one you want. Try not to throw the zapper around, it's not particularly helpful. And don't breathe in the smoke if you're using the zapper. Kind of hold your breath so that it's not being inhaled, it's not good for you, it's melted nylon. But just make sure there's no ends sticking out. And then you're going to, once again, glue some more. So pop glue onto the end and just down the top of that, either side of the bracelet, so that it's really in there nice and secure. Quite a lot of glue, I know. I'm a little obsessed with making sure things are secure and not going to come apart on me. But yeah, just be really generous with the glue and make sure that you've got it done. It shouldn't squish out anywhere unless you've been super excessive. It should just sit nicely in it. And then you're going to take your jewelry pliers to close it up, which I will do in just a second when I finish applying 10 ton of glue. So use your pliers. So if you've opened it up slightly, then close that little clap back down again a little before pushing. But then you're just going to use the flat end of whatever pliers you've got. Just encourage the little end bit to squish back down so it's nice and level and really tight against itself so that nothing can slide out, come anywhere. And then you have a perfect little neat clasp that makes the end of your bracelet really nice and neat and tidy. And you're going to repeat the process all over again on the other side. And if you're sensible, you pre-prep the wires so that you don't have so much thread sticking out this time and make it a little easier. But it just pops on nice and quick and simple. More glue and then slide it on down. So really nice and simple, and that bit's all done. Now it's time to add the jump rings, the chain and the lobster claw. Okay, so just grab one of your little jump rings or split rings. Someone please tell me the difference between them. I know there's two types, but I don't remember which one's which. But you want to just gently open that up so you can pop it through your bracelets. Just give it a little twist so it creates a nice little opening. Then slide your bracelet on, and then slide your little lobster claw or whatever clasp you're using back on, and then close those back up, the jump ring back up again, nice and good. Make sure it's lined up nicely so there's no gap for it to fall off. And then do the same process on the other side. Open up your ring to attach to the other side. So nice and quick and simple. Takes seconds if you've got the right tools. Grab your chain. Make sure that you hook it onto the very end of your chain. So sometimes give it a little shake to make sure it's not twisted on itself. And then hook that on too. And then close up your binding again, your jump ring, and it's all done. And that is one beaded bracelet, rainbow style this time, but you can do all different ones, and at a later date there will be some patterned ones coming which we will do together as well. But I really like it. I think it's a nice cute little bracelet, and if you do the double size it looks just as nice as the thin one there. So enjoy. You all take care. Bye.